So hello and big welcome to Dom Bray, of course, the games master extraordinaire. Obviously, probably best known from Tales from the Twentyside, of course. I'm a big fan, especially the Alwyn character. He's great. But you do a lot of games mastery. You games master a lot of people, don't you?
I do, yes. So, as Stu's rightly said, hello there. My name is Dom. You may have heard my dulcet, sultry tones on the podcast Tales from the Twentyside, as Stu has mentioned, which is a Pathfinder Second Edition roleplay podcast, which I run. So D&D and Pathfinder and role-playing games are a big part of my life. I run the podcast for Stu and the rest of the guys. I also run a community group in the town where I grew up, which sort of ran. We started it before we went into the pandemic and all that sort of stuff, and we managed to keep it going online whilst COVID and stuff has been going on. And we finally managed to get back to the pub. But that little community group of D&D fifth edition players, we have had at one point about 100 players as part of that group, sort of just dropping in and dropping out. Obviously not all run by myself. That would be madness. There is a group of us DMs who kind of just run different quests every week, and different players drop in and drop out as they see fit, and it's been very, very successful by all measures. On top of that, I also run a number of home games as well. So I know, Stu, you play in one of my Pathfinder games, where we're doing Skull and Shackles, which is very exciting. But of course, with all that said, what I'm here to talk about today is nothing really to do with Pathfinder or D&D or any other RPGs like that. What I'm here to talk about today, and go on, Stu, if you want to jump in, please do.
No, I was just going to ask, actually. I mean, it's something I've heard of, but I've not experienced myself. But isn't it a form of role playing? Have I completely got the wrong end of the stick there?
It is. So what I'm here to talk about today is, which hopefully you would know from sort of seeing the title of the episode. Today I'm here to talk about my interest in the Mass Effect franchise. So obviously, most famously, Mass Effect is a series of video games produced by BioWare, but it also has a kind of small expanded universe element to it, which includes sort of comics, novels, graphic novels, all that sort of thing. It's not as expansive as, say, the Star Wars expanded universe or the Trek expanded universe, but it is a rich and detailed world in its own right. And Stu is quite right in saying that it is a form of RPG, because certainly with the first installment in the game franchise, it is very much a traditional Western style role-playing game, in that your character advances differently as you grow in experience and level up, and you can give yourself different abilities and all sorts of things. So it's although the story is a linear story progression, your characters can sort of branch out and be different almost every time you play, with different abilities and different scores and all that sort of thing.
Right. Okay. So let's picture the scene a little bit here. You're sat in your flat. You're having a good old game of Mass Effect. Martians have landed in your streets. They come into your flat and they say, "What is this that you're doing?"
Well, this is. I'm glad we started with this question, because this is the question that I was dreading the most from a little list you sent me. So I suppose to kind of answer that question, we need to first kind of look at what Mass Effect is. Now, for those of you who are already in the know, this won't be new information. But for those of you who haven't experienced Mass Effect before, including by his own admission, Stu,
Me.
so Mass Effect is a science fiction RPG franchise, sort of set in the not too distant future. I think off the top of my head, it's only about 120 years from where we are currently. It might even be less than that. I can't remember the exact timeline. But so yeah, so it's sort of set in the very near future, where humanity has ascended from Earth, discovered the secrets of sort of interstellar faster than light travel, and in doing so, they have found the galaxy at large to be full of life, and sort of being newcomers on the galactic stage. The kind of preamble to the Mass Effect franchise is that humanity is kind of trying to find a place for itself amongst the galactic community in which it now finds itself. This, as you go through the story of the first game and also the novels, that there becomes this kind of overarching story about a forerunner race called the Protheans, who are responsible for all for all technology in the galaxy as it's currently known. Now this forerunner race disappeared from the galaxy about 50,000 years ago, very, very suddenly, with no real reason or explanation offered. The only thing that is known is that they left sort of relics and repositories of information dotted around the galaxy, seemingly for the younger races to find and then develop their own technology in order to keep moving forward with everything. And as you progress through the story, the game itself starts to tell the story of a galaxy-wide extinction event, which occurred perhaps about 50,000 years ago, which ostensibly what was the cause for wiping out the Protheans. And then without revealing too much, because this could get a little bit spoilery. I don't want to ruin it for those of you who have yet to experience it. It transpires that you are racing against time to prevent the same galactic-wide extinction event, which would wipe out kind of all advanced intelligent life in the cosmos.
High stakes, then.
Quite. It does end up being quite high stakes. It really does. But along the way, you explore, I think, literally hundreds of planets if you play through and sort of do every little detail, which I do because I'm a completionist by my own admission. Yeah, you explore hundreds of planets. You meet dozens of different races, all of which have their own cultures and their own beliefs and their own ideals. And in doing so, you get to. And I know that this is obviously human projections on alien races that we don't necessarily know how they would react, but it does have this overarching feeling of kind of bringing a community together and making. Eventually, you find yourself building a crew of basically building a crew of other soldiers and mercenaries to help you undertake this task, and most of which end up being from one alien race or another. Human companions are very much in the minority within the franchise, and that kind of brings us back full circle to your question, Stu, which is if the Martians landed tomorrow, and they came into my flat and they said in their universal translator that I can somehow understand. If they said to me, "Oh, this Mass Effect that you're playing here, what is that? How can you explain that to us?" It's a bit of a weird meta answer, but I think the way I would explain it to them is, this is my belief that we can be friends. My experiences through playing this form of entertainment on my planet have shown me that I want to be friends with you. I want to see how we can work together to enhance both our species.
Wow, that's quite an answer, and I think obviously a lot of people who watch this are Star Trek fans, myself included, will, I think, relate to that. You know, Star Trek being this vision of hope for the future and all about that infinite diversity and what have you. Yeah, that's excellent. So this, I mean, obviously it's something you're very passionate about, and that's quite clear. And you mentioned that it's like 15 years old now. Does that go back to, like, do your memories of Mass Effect go back 15 years? Did you first encounter it when it first came out?
More or less, yes. So when the first Mass Effect game was released back in 2007, I do have memories of trying to play it and not getting very far. Right. I think I had it. It would have been on my Xbox 360 at the time, and I remember playing it. Because I think I remember buying it because I thought the box art looked really, really cool. And that's a running theme with me. Like if you can hook me with a logo or with your box art, there's a good chance that I'm going to buy your product, because I'm very susceptible to visual marketing. But I do remember having a copy of the original Mass Effect when it first came out. Played a bit of it, quite enjoyed it. I remember getting through like the first kind of not quite tutorial mission, but almost like a prologue. I remember getting through that prologue, getting to a place called the Citadel, which is like a big hub world where you can sort of walk around. And I remember just getting lost for hours, just walking around the Citadel, just exploring every little nook and cranny, talking to everybody I could talk to, because this was, I think for me at the time, I would have been 15, 16 years old. So I think in terms of gaming, this was quite a revolutionary thing for me. I hadn't really experienced a proper, a semi-open world where you can walk around and you can talk to kind of everyone you meet, and most of them have problems that you can solve and all that sort of thing. But I do remember spending a ridiculous amount of time on the Citadel, to the point where I actually got bored of it, and I was like, oh, actually, you know what? I'm guessing this is the entire game. I don't need to play anymore. We closed the book on the first Mass Effect for a little while. It's then not until 2000 and I want to say 2009 when Mass Effect 2 was released. I'm just checking the old information superhighway. 2010 for the release of Mass Effect 2, which is the second in the series. And again, I remember picking up Mass Effect 2. I think I got it quite cheap from Game at the time. I think I had a load of stuff to trade in. So I got it for a song, and kind of much in the same vein as the first game, I was drawn in by the cover art on the box. So I got myself a copy of Mass Effect 2 on the Xbox 360, and I remember playing it, sort of thinking, oh, I wonder if this will be like the first one. I'll play it for a bit and then get bored of it. Actually, no, I fell in love with Mass Effect 2. It was very, very accessible to me. the style of the game changed quite dramatically. It became a bit more of a cover shooter than an RPG. Still retains RPG elements. It's an expansive story. You have to make a lot of decisions along the way, and although the end goal is the same, you are kind of free to choose your own path through that. And I was really just blown away by how much of a step up the world building had from the first game to the second. And objectively, the world building in the first game is fantastic once you actually do get into it properly. But the second game was really my gateway to it. And after playing through the second game and getting to the final mission, which is, in my opinion, just a masterpiece of gaming, kind of level design and cinematic and all that sort of stuff. I remember, and I could talk a lot about that, which might be a subject for another time. It's called the Suicide Mission for those who don't know, and depending on your actions previously in the game, it can end in several different ways, including with your character unable to continue to the next game.
Right.
So there is a chance for you to kind of die at the very end of that. As I say, that's a tangent that I'm getting into quite deeply there. After I had played through the second game and fallen in love with it, I thought, right, okay, it's time to really go back and give the first game a chance. And that's when I think I started actually getting into the series properly. Because I then went back to the first game. Actually played it properly, didn't just run around the hub area for 4 hours on end. And yeah, I found that although there were some technical limitations and some design limitations that were a bit grating coming sort of from second game backwards, I fell in love with the world building, and it was a really nice moment to kind of connect up everything I knew from the second installment with what the first installment was telling me in terms of the lore, the history of the galaxy, and all that sort of stuff. And then that kind of continued, and it tied in quite well with the release of the third Mass Effect game. And then it's kind of been a growing thing from there. But I think I have answered your question, Stu. My first experience was was less than impressive, but I gave it a chance, and I went back to it.
Yeah, well, seeing some pretty artwork and basing game. Do you know, that's how I used to buy vinyl albums.
If it's got
based on the artwork,
purely.
Yeah.
I think I'm convinced it's the best way to choose kind of anything. I might be completely wrong, but like if something is visually impressive, that's got to be a good sign to start with.
Well, yeah, because hopefully the marketing and artwork department have done their job and reflected the game, the album, the movie, whatever it might be. Absolutely. It sounds like you get quite a lot out of it. What would you say is the biggest thing it gives you personally across the whole series, and like including the books and the comic books that you've mentioned, graphic novels?
So I think the biggest thing it gives me, or has given me on a personal level, is just I get a real sense of connection whenever I play Mass Effect, and I don't play through it often. I last played through it sort of back in August, September, when the Legendary Edition came out, which is basically a kind of a remaster, re-release of all three games in one package. But before that, I hadn't played for quite some time. But yeah, so to actually answer the question, every time I do go back to it, there is just this overwhelming sense of connection. I feel connected to Commander Shepard, who is the character that I'm playing. I feel connected to the aliens that you meet along the way. And I'm not talking just about sort of the squad mates, the people that you come to work with. I'm talking about kind of all the races in the galaxy have something that feels very human about them, which I find very grounding and I find very, very, very connecting. As mentioned, the relationships with your squad mates, particularly from kind of a second game onwards, are very intensely developed. You know, by the end of the second Mass Effect, I really felt like I had made a group of good friends who I would do anything for, and then get very sad when you mess up the suicide mission and half them die, because that's the thing that can happen. But above all else, I feel connected to the world of Mass Effect. Like the galaxy is so rich in information and lore, and because of the way that the traveling works, you do go literally all over the galaxy. You know, you might go to I'm going to use sectors just as a kind of term that those of you from a Star Trek background will understand. But each sector of the galaxy you go to, you might visit up to 5 or 6 different star systems, and all of these star systems will have usually between 2 and sometimes as many as 8 or 9 planets within them. You can't visit them all. You can't land on them all, but you can visit. You can visit all of these places and kind of get a little blurb about that planet. And it's all stuff that is grounded in real world science and what we know of astronomy and stellar physics and all that sort of stuff. And it's very, very interesting. I've spent hours just flying around the galaxy map, going to different planets and reading what comes up for these different planets. And it's not just a list of like sort of diameter of the planet, atmosphere type, all that sort of thing. It will also give a bit of history on the planet as well, and also kind of what the current situation is. Like there is one particular planet that sticks in my mind. It's a planet first introduced in the second Mass Effect game, and it lies in a region of space that is controlled by a robotic race called the Geth, who certainly for the purposes of the first game are an enemy to kind of all organic life within the galaxy. In the second game, you find yourself traveling into Geth space, and there's one particular planet that you can visit. Again, you don't get to land on it because it's a gas giant. It's used mostly. It's used. The blurb sort of says it's used for refueling and all that sort of thing. But my favorite thing about it is that at the bottom it has I think it's a Galactic Council travel advisory, and it just says that Sharoom is in Geth space. Any approach is tantamount to suicide, and I love that. I love that. I love those little things that these fictional planets come with their own travel advisories to reflect the part of the galaxy that they're in. I think that's a really nice little detail, and the world is full of those little details that, as I say, just make me feel really connected to it.
Please tell me there's a planet out there with the description mostly harmless.
There might well be. If there is, I've not seen it, but there might well be.
One for people to find. So we've talked about like what's great about Mass Effect. It really does sound fantastic. I'm going to start looking into this now seriously. But if you could change one thing about it, what would it be?
If I could change one thing about Mass Effect, now for those of you, again, for those of you who are familiar with the franchise, you probably have an idea of what I'm about to say. And I'm sorry to say to you that you are wrong. You're incorrect in your assumptions. What people probably assume I'm going to talk about when you ask someone, what would you change about Mass Effect? The ending of the third game, so the final game in the Commander Shepard series, is very, very controversial. It's very controversial because when Mass Effect 3 was released, you kind of had 3 games of branching storylines and decisions that you can make. And when Mass Effect 3 was released, a lot of people felt that a lot of those decisions didn't matter. It felt like you ended up in the same place regardless. Well, you do, because the story has the same ending, but the kind of final decision you have to make, a lot of people felt that it was kind of a flavor, three colors of the same flavor, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, I did say that I'm not going to talk about the ending of Mass Effect, because frankly, it's been talked about enough on the internet, and also particularly with the release of the extended cut and the Legendary Edition, I actually disagree that the ending of Mass Effect is bad. It's not great. It could be improved, but it's not the boogeyman that a lot of people claim it to be, and it's certainly not the boogeyman that it was when it was first released. So instead, what I would like to talk about when I talk about something I would change in the Mass Effect franchise, there is one particular character who I cannot. Am I okay to swear?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Swear. Excellent. There is one particular character in the franchise who I cannot fucking stand. This character's name is Kai Leng, his shtick is that he's kind of a cybernetic space ninja who gets introduced as a villain in the very third game. That in itself is not my issue with the character. My issue with the character is that the character is clearly a very edgy self-insert. The writers in the final installment, and indeed some of the supporting media, so some of the comics and some of the books in which this character appears, have gone to great lengths to make him sort of like, this guy's he's a special snowflake, and you should fear him. He's something to be. They go to great lengths to big him up to be something he's not, and this is really exemplified in the third game in the series. When you meet this character for the first time, the reaction of kind of everybody around you is, oh my god, it's Kai Leng. He's a badass. He's if he's involved, you better watch your back and all that sort of stuff. And your character, Commander Shepard, buys into it. The problem for me is that at that point in the story, you have no reason to. At this point in the story, you have never met this person. You have never met this person. They have never been heard of. They've never been mentioned. And certainly some of that reaction can be explained when you look into the supporting media. It's there's a lot more information about him in the novels and in the comics and in the graphic novels. But if you're most people who are involved with the Mass Effect franchise will just play the games because it is a small franchise. It's definitely not on the scale of Star Wars or Star Trek or anything like that. And the problem is there is a very good chance that people playing that game will have no idea who that character is. They won't have read the supporting material, and and they won't know why this character should be respected or feared or whatever. And this continues throughout the story of the third game. You know, you come up against Kai Leng on multiple occasions, and again, he's kind of meant to be this kind of antagonist who you're always racing against to get the MacGuffin to finish the game and all that sort of stuff. My biggest issue with Kai Leng is not that they made him the way they did. It's that he ends up being very annoying. He becomes an annoyance. Like every time he pops up, either in a cutscene or in gameplay, everything has to be about him. It's like the creator of that character has gone, look at my creation, look at my amazing thing that I've made, and it's not that amazing. I could talk in depth about things that are wrong with the character of Kai Leng, and possibly the most egregious thing for me is that he has plot armor coming out of his eyeballs. He has plot armor. There are situations where you encounter him where he should not escape from you, but he does. Because he's the writer's special pet, and he's got to do all these amazing things and be really dark and edgy. So if I were to change one thing about the Mass Effect franchise, it would be to take characters like Kai Leng, because there are a couple of them, but Kai Leng is the most heinous example, in my opinion. It would be to take self-insert special snowflake characters like that and throw them into the sea. that is what I would change about the Mass Effect franchise.
So not a member of the Kai Leng fan club.
Not at all. Not at all.
Now, you've mentioned there's 3 games, there's novels, there's graphic novels. What's next for Mass Effect? Do you think there'll be a 4th game? Is there a movie in the offing? What do you think will be next?
There's lots of things that kind of get talked about, and certainly in terms of video games, there is technically a 4th already out. It's called Mass Effect Andromeda, which came out, I want to say, back in 2016, 2017. Very widely panned by critics and audiences. It's the reason I've not talked about it much up to this point is because it's an okay story in its own right. However, it is completely detached from everything that kind of takes place in the main 3 games. Is
it more of a spin-off then, rather than
kind of? Yes, it's more of like a side story. So with the main Mass Effect franchise, they take place in our galaxy. They take place in the Milky Way. Mass Effect Andromeda takes place in the Andromeda galaxy. So just a bit of, and it's also set, I think it's set 500 years after the events of the main Mass Effect franchise, because the story of Mass Effect Andromeda is that kind of toward the end of the main series of Mass Effect, people start to catch on and wise up that there might be this big galaxy-wide extinction event about to happen. And so there is a project called the Andromeda Initiative, which is basically creates a whole bunch of ARC ships to kind of send off into dark space with the goal of reaching and colonizing the Andromeda galaxy, so that if something bad does happen to the Milky Way, that genetic diversity will be preserved, and it will continue, and it will go on in a new part of the universe. Now, Andromeda got panned, as I mentioned, by critics and by audiences alike, because it was just such a radical shift from what had been sort of come to expect from the first three games. The gameplay style, although it was still kind of a cover shooter with RPG elements, a lot of the gameplay mechanics had been fundamentally changed. And there were a lot of people who didn't really like that, myself included. And also, I mentioned previously that one of the biggest things that Mass Effect gives me is this sense of connection. I found that I didn't have that with Andromeda. Like perhaps it's because it was done by a different team, or perhaps it's just because the idea of exploring the Milky Way is kind of okay with me. Like that's acceptable to me in my head because it's still rooted in home. I've still always got a thread back to me as a human being, if that makes sense. Whereas with Andromeda, you're in a completely alien galaxy. And it felt very disconnected from the franchise as a whole when I played Andromeda. It is worth playing. You can usually get hold of a copy for very, very cheap these days because, as I mentioned, it bombed when it came out. But in terms of any kind of introduction to the series, I wouldn't recommend it. However, once again, I've gone off on a tangent, so I do apologise. Stu,
Okay.
Stu, you were asking kind of where Mass Effect is going in the future, and
Yes.
there are whispers. There have been whispers for many years that there will be a movie kind of in the works, which I would tentatively welcome. Like it would be amazing to see kind of these things, this story put up on the big screen. The problem with that, and part of the reason I don't think that it ever will come to full fruition, is that part of the big appeal of Mass Effect is that you exist in a branching world where your choices have knock-on effects down the line, and depending on the decisions that you make at different moments in the story, you can have almost an entirely different experience each time you play. And that's part of the reason why I think film will probably never happen, because when you're making a film, you're saying that this is the one kind of canon storyline, and all the others are kind of air quotes wrong in a way. What I do think will happen if they do go down a film route, I think, or I would like to think that a film would focus on somebody other than Commander Shepard. So Commander Shepard is kind of the protagonist of the main Mass Effect series. That's the character that you play through these games, and ostensibly you end up kind of being the hero of the story. So what I would love to see is a film or perhaps a series that is set elsewhere in the galaxy. So you kind of have all this stuff with Commander Shepard going on very much in the background, so that it's grounded in the same timeline, but you're looking more at other stories. I'm thinking kind of along the lines of Star Trek Lower Decks.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, where you're focusing more on the boots on the ground rather than on the officers or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, it could even be set, I suppose, with an entirely alien species, just kind of on the sidelines, as it were. And I like what so Star Wars Knights of the, I know it was the other way around. The movies came first and then the game, but Knights of the Old Republic got around that by simply setting it 1,000 years beforehand. So anything could have changed in that time.
And it's
and you did have branching stories that ended completely differently. You know, light side one, dark side one. You know,
and it's
so there are ways and means of keeping the integrity of that branch.
They definitely are. But
yeah,
it's interesting that you mention Knights of the Old Republic, because Knights of the Old Republic was made by BioWare, the same company who made Mass Effect.
Right. And it's one of my favorite games is Knights of the Old Republic.
In that case, I think you will really enjoy at least the first installment of the Mass Effect series. The first two installments, their lead writer was Drew Karpyshyn, who was also the lead writer on KOTOR.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah, definitely one I want to check out. So speaking of which, you've mentioned Xbox 360 for the first two games. Is it Xbox specific as a game, or is it across PC, Mac, PlayStation? Where can people access this?
So when it was first released, I think it was Xbox and PC exclusive. When Mass Effect 3 was released, it was also released on PlayStation 3. It would have been PlayStation 3. And kind of as part of that port over to PlayStation, the PlayStation release of Mass Effect 3 came with a short interactive comic called Mass Effect Genesis, which basically allowed PlayStation players to make relevant decisions for their character before starting the game itself, if that makes sense. Oh, so okay. Just so that they still got a small whisper of that kind of narrative experience prior to it. In terms of getting into Mass Effect these days, really easy, because the game series, as mentioned, was recently re-released, called the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, which, as I mentioned, was a graphical remaster and just kind of puts all three games into one place. Certainly on the PlayStation Store, at time of recording, that is currently half price. It's £25 for all three games, all the DLC that was ever released for them, a graphical kind of enhancement, and just basically for what you get for 25 quid. And even if you were to buy it at full price, you're still getting hundreds of hours of experience out of that.
I know what I'm doing straight after this recording.
There you go. But yeah, so the Legendary Edition is available on PS4, PS5, the newest Xboxes, and also Switch. And it's probably also available on PC. I don't do much PC gaming, so I don't really keep up with that market. But it's more than likely on PC as well. If video games aren't your thing and you prefer like a handheld visual medium, the novel series written by Drew Karpyshyn starts with Mass Effect Revelations. That there are three novels that were written by Drew Karpyshyn. So Mass Effect Revelation is kind of like a written prequel to the very first game. So if you that might also be a nice way to get yourself into the world and then progress into the game franchise after that.
Okay, excellent. So yeah, and it should be easy access for anyone there.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Dom, thank you so much for talking about Mass Effect. And yeah, definitely you've sold me on it. I've heard of it, but I've never really bothered. I don't know why. And now I really am wondering why. Why not? But obviously we mentioned Tales from the Twentyside early on. where can people listen to your awesome game mastery?
You can listen to my air quotes awesome game mastering at talesfromthetwentyside.com. You can also listen to us kind of on any good podcast app. So I think we're on Apple Music, we're on Spotify, we're on Acast, we're on Stitcher.
Probably yes. We I know we're on many through being on one or two, Podbean and
yeah, they're kind of all linked together. Yeah, so search your podcast app of choice for Tales from the Twentyside, or alternatively head over to talesfromthetwentyside.com. We'd love to have you. We'd love to have you listen in, and if you enjoy it, we also have a Discord server and a small community going on as well. So yeah, that's where you can hear more from me. But yeah, thank you for having me on, Stu. It's been nice to just spend an hour talking about this, and thank you to all of the fan focus viewers / listeners / whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dom. I'll see you soon.
Indeed you will. Cheers, Stu. Bye-bye.